Cool, and we're live. We're back in playing old games because it's cool. So, um, today, where we left off, I'm in the sort of final dungeon. Ben is in the
Locked in eternal combat.
yes, with Pazuzu, who is quite a challenge. Um, we got to be careful when Pazuzu's wings are up. We have to wait until the shield thing goes away.
Yes, and I'm very excited because I've learned two things since we last left off. One is I have purchased. I had previously purchased many seeds, so I thought that I had no magic points, but it turns out I essentially have infinite magic points. And also, he plays the same animation for when his wings go up and when his wings go down.
Mm-hmm.
And I was too scared. I thought that when it said that his wings were going down, but then it played the animation, I thought that was him like just immediately putting the wings back up. So I feel empowered in so many ways against this guy.
Well, I'm against his. I'm currently
Hey,
fighting against
we're
his powered up form in the final dungeon. It's not exactly a boss rush, but you do fight sort of the elemental guardians again.
Mm-hmm. And he's sporting a fashionable red and orange ensemble.
Yeah, it's his fall look.
Yes, yeah. um. So how are things, Joe?
Things are good. I'm some of the open source contributions I've been making towards like upstream projects from this from Gist have started to get merged. Some of them have been quite a long process, but it's important when you're contributing to open source to like adopt the sort of norms and standards of the project. And I am gonna be like, so far we've been using on just the sort of standard default like packaged RetroArch
Yes.
for these emulators.
Yeah.
I'm going to start using custom builds just because I know RetroArch is going to take a little while to integrate some of these like changes to mscriptin and some of these other upstream changes, which is fine. And we'll just have custom builds for a little bit, and hopefully we'll be able to. It's something we kind of had to do eventually anyway to track like versions of emulator cores to make sure that like for preservation reasons we don't. It might be that like a replay maybe only works in a certain version
Yes.
of the emulators.
Yes. How like what does that look like? Like how like that's such a like part of this whole like endeavor is in the name of game preservation.
Right.
And so like, the fact that you're like at this point is like so incredible, but it also like I feel like you're referring to a like if game preservation is already like a can of worms, you're now talking about like game preservation. Like you're talking about like ensuring that the versions of these emulators remain the same so that this work continues to live on. Like how far down does that rabbit hole go? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I guess in the limit we'd be like preserving, like we'd use QEMU or something and preserve a particular version of Google Chrome and all that. I think we have the option to go arbitrarily deep, but that's like a nice thing about emulation is you can. Like an emulator itself is just software, so it can also be emulated.
Yes. Yes.
We're trying, just for performance reasons and ease of distribution. You've done it. You've defeated Pazuzu. Luckily, you won't have to chase him around again. That's something that they don't make you do another time. Yeah. So for performance reasons, we'd like to be able to keep using newer versions of emulators that work on new platforms and so on. But we know as a fallback, we can also emulate the browser environment if we need to. I don't think it will come to that. I think the more immediate problem is, like, let's say we update the RetroArch front end, or we update, like, there's a bug and we have to update our emulator cores. This is fine. It's just that if we had replays or other, like, kind of products that players had made and wanted to share, like for archival reasons, we don't really have the option of, like, breaking old recordings or breaking old states. So we need to record with each state and with each replay which version of which emulator was used to create it.
Yes, got it.
Yes.
Okay.
And we don't do this yet, but this is going to be part of our metadata, our descriptive metadata. It's going to be part of our database, so we'll have these, like, different versions of the cores in the database rather than just being, like, on the server's file system and shared out or whatever. So
got it. Okay, well, when you put it that way, that doesn't seem impossibly difficult.
No, really, it's just a matter of figuring out what it is we want and then encoding the right, like, data to make that happen.
To make sure that, like, you can successfully recreate it from, and then so this is the metadata would have, like, this is the version of the emulator, and
That's
this
right.
is that is it your I was gonna say responsibility. Is it your responsibility? Is it your intent to then also, like, as part of this database, have every possible version or every reasonable version of the software available? Or is there a little bit of a, like, well, we've told you that this is what you need, but now it's sort of, like, up to you to kind of, like, find it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be that we maintain those versions that we have published before.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily that we want to support any combination of emulators ever, but more that for the ones that people have done recordings in, we need those recordings to be stable.
Yes.
And it's also worth noting that there's at least 4 software systems engaged here. There's the browser, like, changes in the browser may break things, which is really tricky to deal with for us. There's the RetroArch front end, which is shared across the different emulator cores, which is how we get, like, input recording and the sort of saving loading states mechanisms and all that stuff. There's the emulator core itself, which is updated less frequently, but when there's a bug found or a performance improvement to be had, those do change. And then there's the compiler, the Mscripton compiler, that compiles from C code to WebAssembly. And that also is a moving project, and it updates very frequently, although we don't necessarily have to track every single update there.
Okay.
I just want to pause for a second because the music here is, like, totally sick. I know you're not hearing the, like, last boss kind of music from my machine, but when you check it out on stream later on the VODs, you'll
Oh, I can't wait. Yeah. And even the fight with Pazuzu, like, I was sort of, like, admiring the music.
Yeah, the boss music in this game is pretty good. Yeah, Yeah, the Pazuzu fight, I think we talked about it before, but it's one of these where, like, you spend a lot of the battle, like, not doing anything, right? Like, the trick is to learn when not to do stuff.
Yes.
Like the Mist Dragon in Final Fantasy IV, right?
Yeah. Yep.
There's it's like a cliche, right? The Welk in Final Fantasy VI, the Lightning Welk. That I don't know how I feel about it as a game design, right? It's like you make the mistake once and you're like, ah, dang, maybe I have to go back to my last save. But then it's like not that interesting after that.
Yeah, it like, I mean, I know that, like, the thoughts and feelings, that was a funny line of dialogue. The thoughts and feelings that I had in that fight that I just experienced was like, I like full of fear and generally speaking feeling not super in control, right? It's like, okay, there's some initiative calculator that's determining, like, the order that we go in, and, like, I hope that my guys get to go before he does his thing. And before he puts up his shield. And I hope that yeah, I guess that's the big thing. And then like only really feeling comfortable doing it the turn, casting a magic spell the turn that the shield comes down, because it's like I figured that, like, well, surely the game would be kind enough to give me one, free option. And so, yeah, sorry, I'm back. I'm back to Focus Tower. So I was supposed to go to Fireburg.
Yeah, and chat with Ruben's
Yes.
dad.
Yes. So I'll go do that. So yeah, what am I saying? But I guess it, like, it does break up the monotony, I guess, of just, like, every turn I am just using the same action. Like, every turn I'm just using my best ability. Like, I'm lying in wait to spring my trap, and then when I know that it's safe to do so, I do so, and it does, like, add a certain sense of victory when I, like, pull that off.
It's like, I know your tricks.
Yes.
I'm too savvy for this.
Yeah. You can't let a monster get the best of you. That's good advice.
I think he's in bed.
Yeah. I was just robbing him first. Oh,
he's actually a big spider.
How convenient! Great.
This boss actually has some animations on attacks, which is cool.
Yeah, no, that guy looks awesome. The Dark King.
But, unfortunately, once you get the white spell, the, like, holy equivalent in this game, most of the bosses and enemies are just like, you cast it on them over and over again until they're dead.
Yeah. Sort of the very thing we were just talking about.
Yeah.
There is the saddle point or whatever.
There isn't, like, there's an unfortunate, like, shallowness to RPG battle systems. And what's worse is that the attempts to mitigate it often make something that's just like not as pleasant in the common case, right? It's tricky because like you want the if you have a bunch of random battles with nameless mooks, like you want those to be easily dispensed.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing a game about inventory management or, a roguelike or something, right?
You were talking about how there was oh gosh, I forget what it was, but
The
this
Final
was a while
Fantasy
ago.
Pixel remake.
Yeah. Where like every fight sort of turns into a strategic battle of wits, and although on the one hand it's kind of cool, like on the other hand it's like it's exhausting. Like
Yes.
you don't want and people talk about like the fantasy or the power fantasy of like playing video games, like to some extent it is a little fun to feel like you're a bully and you're
just
able
like
to
cutting
just sort
through
of
the
like
hordes, Dynasty Warriors style. Yeah, it's tricky because like in the absence of a gimmick, boss fights become like just attrition.
Yes.
Like they're essentially level checks to make sure that
Yep.
you are like high enough stats. So he's changed now from a spider into a betentacled critter.
Very cool. I was thinking like in one of his earlier forms he looked a little Gilgameshy, and now
Yes.
he's a little Ultrosy.
Yes, I don't believe that's intentional. I think it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
going from one cliche to another. I actually like that second form the best aesthetically because it has the most going on, right? The most like kind of visual interest. And then he explodes. Yes, yes. We defeated the Dark King.
Hooray!
At last, it's all over.
It's all over.
Now, I also noticed there's this like kind of glassy texture with the stalactites, which reminds me of the lunar subterrane in Final Fantasy IV. Like the starry background and stuff too is the same kind of deal. Disguised as a human, I, the Crystal of Light, have guided you. So the old man, the kind of goofy old guy, was the crystal all along.
Wow.
And here's the moral of the story. Evil can't thrive if you keep hope alive, use your courage, and respect your world. Now, is this like a universal theme across Final Fantasies?
Yeah, I
guess it's kind of generic.
I mean, you could say that it's a universal theme, yeah, across many pieces of media. But I love that question. I would say, on first blush, I would say yes. I would say hope, courage, and respecting the world are definitely themes that show up in Final Fantasy.
It's interesting because that's like it's the central theme, but in many ways it's the least interesting theme of those games. And I'm thinking, for example, like Final Fantasy VI. It's true that you could read its theme mainly as being about that, like keep hope alive and whatever.
Yeah.
But actually, it's about like what it means. Like the side themes are like what it means to be human, or like how to forgive yourself, your like past mistakes. Like the whole ensemble cast introduces these other themes that are much more memorable, and they're like that's when people remember like those aspects of the story. I think much more vividly than the baseline. Like there was a bad guy, but we like kept up hope and we beat him.
Yes. Yes. I feel like I think some Final Fantasies lean into this more than others, but like with the idea of respecting the world, I feel that like that that kind of like manifests itself oftentimes in terms of like, and again, it changes from game to game, but like the idea of like the elements and like them being, you know,
Out of
preserved,
whack. Yeah.
kept in balance.
Or misused, right? Like
Yeah,
in Final
yes,
Fantasy V, the problem is like people are exploiting the crystals for their like nationalism or whatever.
yes. Um, and of course Final Fantasy VII with
Sure.
Avalanche and the life stream, Miko, the planet.
Hmm.
Um, and like in Final Fantasy one, there isn't particularly uh like it's like the element like the world is dying, like there are these sort of like environmental issues at play, but
It
it's
has
not.
been dying for like 1,000 years, evidently.
Yes.
Uh, Go on. Sorry, I
Oh,
just
oh, no,
adding
no,
on.
no, no, no. No, you're saying the same things that I think I was
Mm.
about to say. Just that like I think when I was a child, I maybe didn't, and partly maybe because I didn't find it as interesting as some of the other themes, I didn't. I missed this little uh, puzzle earlier. Um, I didn't. Uh, I don't know if I like thought about that. Yeah, as much as the more like interpersonal, like the themes that come up on the more, the relationships
Yeah.
between your party members
And I would
scale.
say caring for the world isn't really a theme of Final Fantasy VI, for example. It's like caring for people. I would say like there's not like an ecological message, and they like destroy magic in the end, like intentionally. So it's that like preservation aspect I think is less present in Final Fantasy VI compared to some of the
Y-
others.
Yes, yes, I agree. Though, I do think that like the Empire and like the villains
Sure.
are sort of painted in general as like uh technologically driven
Sure.
beings.
Burning the
Um,
world for profit, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Um, I think that it's complicated a little bit by like the technology in Narsha or Figaro,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
where
yeah,
there's
yeah,
like
yeah.
steam power and
Sure,
um,
sure.
but yeah, I definitely uh, I agree that like Vector, the Imperial capital, is presented as like a totally mechanized, um, highly like industrial city that's got sad music and is just like unpleasant to be in, and later is like on fire. So
Yeah.
there's a little epilogue here in Mystic Quest. I think it's quite interesting that even through the epilogue they keep the like status bar thing at the bottom with like here's your hit
Yeah.
points, here's your like partner.
uh, Joe,
Oh,
congratulations.
thank you. It wasn't a race, but I won.
Oh yeah. Oh, I
No, I cheated.
uh,
Uh,
very very proud of you.
so
I'm
what do you need to do? Do you need to talk to Phoebe or um, you have the
I
Thunder
I
Rock?
I just got the crest.
Yes, and you flooded the water again, so you can use the
Yes.
Mobius crest to get to the ship. I think.
Okay. And where do I go for
I
that?
want to say it's in Windia. I think it's in the like the one of the northwest houses in Windia.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
think you may need to talk to Phoebe in the house there first. The bottom house.
Oh,
Because I don't remember if I had Phoebe at the time I was in the ship or not. If it was Phoebe
I
or Ruben.
I just got Ruben.
Oh, you just got Ruben.
Ruben
Okay, so you probably do
just joined.
take him to the ship.
Okay.
So
I like I really like. So I just talked to that NPC, and they said, "At last, the world is saved." When like the game is like still definitely ongoing. Uh,
Yes.
but like
Oh, that
from
was the wrong place.
her.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's that?
I took you. I guided you astray. Uh, Here, I'll look it up.
Oh, I'm back in Fireburg.
Well, that's convenient, but not right now.
Okay.
So you've drained the lake already, down into
Yes.
the water. I
Yes.
think the upper right corner of Windia.
Okay.
So go back to Windia, and then you'll take the. There's a house in the upper right. Kaylee is there. Oh, we got our little quill pen.
Hey.
Lots of Final Fantasies do that, right? I
I
recall that.
I think so.
We got little bird sounds. And this was such a Super Nintendo thing to do, to just like sit on the end
Yeah.
screen
I- oh.
forever. As Ben and Tristram journey off to lands unknown in search of more adventure. One thing that's a nice touch is there's these two little, I don't know if you can see it in the stream, but there's like a little blue rectangle and a little brown rectangle moving around within the ship on the deck.
Is that you?
That's Ben and Tristram, yeah, moving around.
That is so cool.
Just doing their little thing.
Noticed that. um, I remember one time beating this game as a little child, and then just like leaving this screen up on the TV
Yeah.
like all day as a monument to my victory.
Yeah. We could call it a kill screen if we want.
Yeah. Ah.
And then
Ship dock. Here we go. Okay. Oh, and the thing where you can fall down into other levels. Love that. Well, Joe, congratulations on
thank you.
finishing the game. Um, I, I, I think both of us knew that this was the inevitable scenario we would be finding ourselves in. I'm really enjoying this game, and it has reminded me of so many fond childhood memories, and has been a catalyst for so many fun conversations with you. I will be honest, I don't necessarily feel compulsed to finish it.
Fair enough. Nobody. There was never any expectation that we all have to finish every game, or that anybody has to finish a game. You know, we play them for a purpose. You've fallen into the trap that I encountered in this ship.
Uh-oh.
The place you need to be at the beginning is climbing the masts.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, but
Gotcha.
you know, it's moot, right? It's fine. We
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
there's no reason no reason to continue if you aren't if you feel satisfied.
Well, I mean, sorry, I don't mean to speak too prematurely. I'm still having a nice time, like right now. But perhaps for next week, or perhaps for our next time, we should play a different game. Are you open to? Oh, Sony Computer Entertainment America presents. What's this?
If you heard the music, you would know it immediately,
Okay.
but you also know it right now.
Now I know it. Now I know it immediately. It is perhaps the game that you and I have played the most together.
Yes, the PSP um, re-release or remaster, I guess we would call it, um, with the versus battles or cooperative battles, co-op scenarios.
Yes, this and Dragon Quest
9.
9.
Sentinels of the Starry Skies.
Yes,
As
yes.
the westernized. They like the alliterative subtitles in the localizations.
Yeah.
Um,
I love the name in Dragon Quest Nine. I love the MacGuffin of benevolence.
yes.
Um,
Yeah, it feels like something from a. That name in particular feels like something that could have come from a, like Mario RPG or something like that.
yeah.
Right.
So Joe, are you pitching this
This
as
is my
our next?
proposal. Yeah, I have a. Hopefully, by the time we meet next week, I will have completed the technical work so that we don't have to wait, to download a couple hundred megabytes to start playing. But even if I don't, it's still totally workable. Um, this is a slight ROM hack of Final Fantasy Tactics that includes some things like gain to JP up is innate to every job,
Yes.
and move find item likewise, and the probability of getting the good item from move find item is like the maximum, regardless of the character's brave and so on. So these kinds of things where it's like large parts of the game. The gain JP up thing I think we talked about in the past, right? Where it's like an ability, it's like a must-have ability while you're gaining levels, which means that you just in practice don't really use other support abilities besides that,
Yes.
for virtually the whole game, which is boring, right? Like is valuable, but because we're min maxers, right? We're trying to optimize our time. Um, we are forced to take it anyway. Now it's just there, and you don't have to do anything to have it.
That's well. That is great. And I'm in full support of this. If for no other reason than it as a showcase of the latest newest
Sure.
abilities of Gist.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if I have a like a list of all the things that I put into this using a FFT patcher, which is a tool from the Final Fantasy Tactics community. Uh,
That's a great name.
I don't know if I sent a message to you about it in the past, or if I how I how I recorded what it was that I was doing, but it's it'll be good. It'll be like a kind of different version, but no like big changes from the vanilla game, uh, and we can we can play through and cheat a little bit, but that's fine. It's
Yeah,
more fun.
yeah. Um, that I'm very excited. And for the folks at home, as you no doubt have already surmised by watching Joe's masterful navigating of Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, uh, I have had the pleasure of seeing uh, Joe's tactical prowess in Final Fantasy Tactics, and it too is a sight to behold. So the folks at home are in for a treat.
Don't oversell it. Uh, it's
Well. Relative to me, it is a sight to behold.
I just like to I think it's interesting to. This is one of the. I think we'll have a lot to talk about with this game because it's not. It has a couple skill checks in the early and mid game, but for most of the game, it's not hard. Like, it's not hard like a puzzle, like a strategy game is often hard as a puzzle game, like Fire Emblem
Yes.
games or Advance Wars, often the difficulty comes from like figuring out a really like clever strategy, right?
Yes.
But that's not, I think, most fights in Final Fantasy Tactics are more like RPG battles, where if you have your stats high enough and you know
There's
are just
very
doing your
little
strongest
chance
attack at all
of.
times, like you'll make it through. It's not really about figuring out the individual encounter.
Yeah.
It's more like a gardening game, really, where you're like growing your little group of guys in a
I
direction.
I love that description. Yeah, no, absolutely is this feeling of cultivating your little army and like even if like even more so when gaining extra JP was
Yes.
mandatory. Uh, Even if you're never going to use a lot of the combinations of abilities that you unlock, it's just extremely satisfying feeling like, this character has unlocked this thing. Also, I just want to say, I think this is the longest I've ever seen this opening screen.
Yeah, the
And so,
attract mode.
like, the fact that there's, like, an introduction to the characters and the backstory and showing these like different like character classes.
And
I don't.
the video the FMV trailer too, right?
Yeah. Yes. Uh-huh. It's
Yeah, I
extreme.
was also. I think it's also, it is surprising that there's such a long attract mode
Yep.
for a
Yep.
game that like you. I don't know if this is like intended to be in the demo kiosk at the game store is when people see this, or if it's like I don't know a scenario where you just leave it on at home and see this stuff come out,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, so I don't do this anymore, and I don't know at what point in my life when I stopped, but there is definitely, and they're just chugging through them. It's not just a few of them. They're going down the list. Um, I but I used to, whenever I bought a game, I would not play it right away. Like I would wait a few minutes to see if there was like an opening movie. And
Mm-hmm.
I do remember in the PlayStation era, or at least I associate with the PlayStation era, there being like multiple opening movies. Like I feel like Wild Arms had both like
Mm-hmm.
a traditional attract screen of like gameplay, but then also had like a lore backstory, and people, anyone can fact check me on that and discover that I'm like conflating that with something else, possibly. But I definitely got into the habit for at least a little bit in my life of um sitting and watching, and I wonder when I stopped doing that. And I feel like, I mean, clearly we're looking at a PlayStation era game right now. I don't remember this, and so um,
Typo in that one with oot.
oh,
Yeah, it's a tricky thing with these pre-rendered videos. They probably noticed it, but too late to, to get the master ready for printing. Yeah, it's wild that it's not only all the job classes, but also, well, except for dancer and bard, I guess, but also some monsters.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, yeah, I feel like a lot of the time now, the intro movie that would play at the title screen just plays when you start the game.
Yeah, yes. hmm and maybe that's when yeah, wow, they're
It's like the whole, cast of credits, the opening,
uh-huh.
even these like Arimans which don't even show up that much in the actual game. There aren't that many encounters with Arimans. Villain of Villainous, monster of monsters. Yeah, it's I like when there's typos in a game like this. It makes it feel more like a something a person made.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was just thinking about that the other day, and like how like as I think as I have grown up and as I have made more things like of my own and developed a deeper understanding that things are made by people. I mean, and with tools and whatever, but like, I I don't I mean again, I don't have anything necessarily profound to say here, but it's like these games from my youth, like the thought of making a game was so unfathomable to me, right? It was like so far outside of my frame of reference that even though like yes, I understood that like oh these are made by people and there's the credits at the end, it still felt like a feat of magic, or it felt like a feat that those were like beyond human ability, even though I
Hmm.
had evidence that it was in fact, humans doing it. And it's I know like looking back now on these games, now that I have made games of my own and helped teach people how to make games, it's I I I I still hold them with like the same sense of wonder as I feel like I did as a child when there are these like unknowable like black boxes of systems, but also now having the ability to kind of like decompose it and like kind of understand like, oh well yeah, like I know how I would, go about implementing something like this and something like that. Like certainly would never claim that I would be able to make, something that fires on all cylinders in the way that Final Fantasy Tactics does, but I do feel confident that I could make a Final Fantasy Tactics esque game,
Yes.
and it's. I mean, I suppose that like artists in any medium kind of like go through the like you learn how the sausage gets made, and it like simultaneously gives you more and less respect for the medium of being able to like appreciate the underpinnings of what's going on. But yeah, I don't know, and that's I think that's one of the things that I've been enjoying about like revisiting some of these older games with you is just like reflecting on like my own relationship with the
Yeah.
media.
Yeah. I absolutely get that. It's wild because in some ways making a game now is like way harder than it was in the 90s, and in some ways it's infinitely easier. And it's very tricky to characterize because on the one hand, like now a professional game is made by teams of hundreds of people, but a game like this would have been like a dozen folks or 2 dozen maybe, plus testers, plus QA, localization and stuff. But the core programming teams, if you're talking about NES or SNES games, it's often like a handful of people. Um, but with professionalization, with higher resolution graphics, with needing to make 3D engines, all these things, the 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 work explodes. Even though you don't have to program like you know assembly code anymore, you get to use like the you get to like see your game running on console in like 5 seconds instead of
Yeah.
in 5 hours. Like it's just the scale has increased, has like so outstripped the
Yes.
improvement in tools, even though the improvement in tools has been massive. Um,
Yes. And I mean and also yes, thank you so much for saying that out loud. That like although yes, I can like decompose these elements into like individual systems that I using modern tools have the ability to recreate. The tools that I am using are extraordinarily different than the tools that were used by these folks, and like absolutely these games are brimming with wizardry that I am not exposing myself to in modern times, and I certainly did not mean to
oh no,
imply.
I'm not. I didn't mean to take it in that
Okay,
direction. I'm
okay,
just saying like something like an NES video game. Odds are that a huge amount of the upfront work is like we need a sprite engine that will like render all the characters and make sure that they don't like if there's too many on a line that they don't like go invisible because of platform limitations. We need to make sure they're moving with physics and that we're not copying too much memory per frame because we only can copy this many bytes within our 16 millisecond budget or whatever. um, and I think that part of programming is so much easier now because processors have gotten so much faster that you literally don't even have to care. You can
Yeah.
just say like draw a
Yes.
picture here, now draw a picture there,
Yep.
and it's completely different than it was then. Um, so in that way, it's a lot easier now, but in other ways, it's a lot harder, um, because you like you have to deal with an operating system. You have to deal with like a browser environment or whatever. Like you have to be part of a bigger system. You don't get to
Yes.
just be in charge of the whole computer.
Yes.
You have to have, um, like controller support plus keyboard support, or you have to have so much content or something that where the expectation at the time would have been much less or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the the there are definitely things about programming that have gotten easier, um,
Yeah.
but also like as an organizational challenge, it's in many ways trickier now than it was then.
And the two are probably like interrelated. It's like now now that we don't need to spend as much time worrying about assembly code, like our minds have now been freed up to now start worrying about these like whatever higher
Yeah,
level
and it's other
worries.
things too. Like, in these assembly programming days, the character's hit points would just be essentially like a global variable, and you would know that
Yes.
you would only ever have 8 characters on screen at a time, and
Yep.
so each one you'd have like memory address, like 50 through 58 is going to be health amounts for all
Yep.
the characters on screen. But
Yep.
nowadays, like you would organize your program with like character object, and there's like an array of character objects, and you iterate through it and do the so like the amount of code you need and the way of thinking about the problem is quite different.
That's true. Yes.
You're writing a more general program than the one you would have written, to just like above and beyond what the game like requires.
Yeah.
And there's benefits to this. Absolutely, it means that you can change the design more as you go and whatever.
Mhm.
But it is, more code is like more inertia, also.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
so um, it's a very complex thing, and I think about like I joked about this in the past, but uh, I've I said that, dynamic memory allocation with like malloc or whatever
Uh-huh.
is like when it becomes hard to write a game.
Yeah.
um, because before then it's just like, well, I have an array of all the like a C array, like I have static memory that is just the current state of the game, and I can just write functions to modify that state.
Uh-huh.
Maybe there'll be bugs and maybe there won't, but it's easy to communicate, right? If these addresses are the player's current X and Y position and these addresses are the player's health, um, but maybe it doesn't scale to very large games.
Yeah. 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 Um, um, I, yeah, but I like, I like, I like what you're saying. I don't think I've ever thought about it exactly in that way before. Like the thought of like, even if the end goal is the same, of like, I am making a game. I am making a single specific game. There is just due to the nature of the tools that exist now and like the context that we write things in, we we even even if it even if there are arguments for it making sense to do it this way, there is almost, you know, inescapably going to be code authoring in this like generic way that is, yes, in the service of this one game, but like in theory is being written just in the way that, like
Like any other program.
like any other
Yeah.
game. Yeah, yeah. Like everyone is going to be writing those things, same things. And then I guess maybe part of that is then where people like where game engines start coming in, where it's like, okay, well, everybody needs the same
Yeah.
things again and
And
again.
then it
So
all gets done in that specific way, and if it doesn't quite work for you, you figure it out, you do a workaround, or you just deal with it, or you re-implement it yourself. Yeah.
yes,
This is one of my big struggles with Unity as it gained more features, is that it became really difficult to use like part of Unity but not all of Unity,
yeah,
or like
uh-huh,
part of its physics but not all of its physics.
yes,
Um,
yes,
and so like any sufficiently complex, like deep thing I tried to implement in Unity, I would be stymied by having to re-implement collision detection in physics. This was even
yeah,
back in like 2012, 2013, even before the current subscription-driven development
uh-huh,
that
yeah.
they've
Well,
been using.
yeah, yes, yes. Um, yeah, no, but I know, but yeah, I mean, I have run into that exact same dilemma with Unity of like, well, and I mean, and specifically with physics, where it's
Yeah,
like, well, I don't exactly want this to be a kinematic object. Like, I kind of want it to be in the physics world, but I want to be in charge of like my own things in in some aspects of it, but then it like doesn't play nicely, and then like if you then start being like, okay, well, it's like I want to, you know, I want to use nav mesh, but then I also want to like combine it with my own physics and stuff. Then that becomes its own set of like
right.
you know, things that are
And
fighting
it's
with.
a combinatorial explosion of like, it's like very infectious, right? Like when you it every it's not very modular as a system, so you can't like
Which is a shame because it like sort of presents itself as if
right
it is.
with the component style, right?
Yeah.
But then
Hmm.
in order to like actually use it, you have to also have this other module that at first glance seems like there's no reason it should have to be
Yes.
attached.
Yes. Yes. Now that said, I do use Unity quite a bit, both in my personal development and in my teaching, and I do enjoy Unity a lot. Um, but
It's a real pain point, though.
it's good. It's good to critique the things you
Yes.
love.
I've been curious about Godot, um, although I haven't taught with it before, really. Um, I like the open source aspect, and I like that in principle, if there's a version you like, you can just keep it forever,
Yes.
right? Unlike
Yes.
with Unity, where sometimes it goes in a weird direction, and like the thing that used to work doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Although they do a pretty good job of having previous versions of Unity. Like you can access
Yes.
old versions of the editor. Um, I I uh, I have a few. It's like my experience with Godot. My personal experience with Godot is like pretty limited. Like I've only like played around with it in like a handful of projects. I have a couple of students this semester in particular, or this whatever this year, this cohort in particular, that are very into Godot, who love Godot with all of their hearts, and I mean, it's great. It's great to have a tool that you love. And if these students are ever watching this stream, I say this with nothing but love and respect in my heart, but I sometimes am a little dubious if there is someone who is a zealot for a particular like type of environment or like system.
For any for
Yeah,
anything, right?
yeah, not
Yeah.
just yeah, exactly. Um, and so it's like there's a little bit of like, okay, well, do you love Godot because you love Godot, or is it you love Godot because maybe it's the first thing you tried and you
Mm.
liked it, now you don't want to try anything else, which is I mean, we all have our first things, and it's great to love it, and I'm not questioning their love for it. I believe that their love is pure and sincere and absolute. It's a Valentine's Day stream, but Valentine's week stream. But I, yeah, I like,
It's good to have some like mental flexibility, right?
yeah,
Like to consider that even if you don't intend to switch to another tool,
yes,
it's good to know what the other tools do, because maybe maybe they're more familiar than you might think, or
yes,
maybe they have an interesting thing that you wish you could take with you back to Godot. Like for Unity, I think the asset pipeline stuff is pretty good, and it's very
yeah,
nice to be able to like save your file and have it like immediately update in the editor and
yeah,
in the game sometimes
absolutely.
if the stars align, and if you're not using your own way of loading assets, because the built-in way of loading assets isn't always what you want. Um, when it works, it works very nicely. Um, so there's definitely like plenty of good stuff in Unity. I think, and I'm sure the same is true of Godot, although I haven't, as I said, I haven't really used it. Um, Anytime we take on the worldview of a particular tool, we're making some things central and some things peripheral, and it's good to be aware of what those are. Yeah,
Yes.
totally. Um, with that, I need to go get lunch
Okay.
before I teach, but
Sounds sounds good.
it's a pleasure as always, Ben. I will send you a link to uh, Final Fantasy Tactics for next time. I might actually I'll send it a little bit later, because I think I may be able to use a compressed disk image instead of an uncompressed one, which will further
Oh,
improve our sort of networking kind of story. So
awesome.
will before the next time we meet, I will give you a way to play Final Fantasy Tactics, and we can sort of go through get past the tutorial mission and be
Fantastic.
ready to go.
Well, I can't wait. Looking forward to it.
All right. Um, and I'll see you next time. We'll stop the stream.
Okay.